Coming into a press conference like this is political theater. It's wrong, and it does a disservice to this country and the people who live here.
Whoa, Donald Trump must be proud. Kristi Noem is now on the lips of every Democratic representative for obvious reasons. And what's more interesting is how she responds to all the drama. I know the false information peddled by the left. Here's how she's firing back at them.
Thank you very much. It's good to have you with us today. We all saw what happened in the video of that room when he was physically taken out, and you heard just now his response, and I understand you had a personal conversation with him as well. So what do you want to say about all of this?
You know, what I would say is we were conducting a press conference to update everyone on the enforcement actions that are ongoing to bring peace to the city of Los Angeles. And this man burst into the room, started lunging towards the podium, interrupting me and elevating his voice, and was stopped, did not identify himself, and was removed from the room. So as soon as he identified himself, appropriate actions were taken. But I would say that, I had a conversation with the senator after this. We sat down for 10 to 15 minutes and talked about the fact that nobody knew who he was. He didn't say who he was, that until he was already had been lunging forward and people were trying to detain him for quite a period of time, and that this, we're leaders, we're public servants. And if he had requested a meeting, I would have loved to have sat down and had a conversation with him. That coming into a press conference like this is political theater. It's wrong, and it does a disservice to this country and the people who live here. So we sat down, had a conversation. We probably disagree on 90% of the topics, but we agreed to exchange phone numbers. We'll continue to talk and share information, and I think that's the way it should be in this country. I wish he would have acted that way in the beginning instead of creating a scene like this.
There's so much to unpack here, but first, can you all see how calm Kristi Noem has been? First, she highlighted the fact that no one in the room knew who Senator Padilla was, and even if he was known, his plan to disrupt the meeting was not going to be tolerated. But there's more. Kristi Noem was graceful enough, to sit with the senator and speak cordially with him. How come, the Democrats are not talking about this part? Now, Senator Alex Padilla was clearly out of pocket. Yet the left paid a blind eye to all this misconduct, and of course they won't talk about it. It's really pitiable, though. Very pitiable.
Well, you're saying that nobody knew who he was, and if they did, he would have been treated differently. And you just heard his comment. He said, if this is the way they treat a U.S. senator, you can only imagine how others are being treated in these deportation efforts. What would you say to that, Secretary?
Yeah. I think his statement is absolutely ridiculous. This man burst into a room, started advancing towards the podium, interrupting an opening statement, elevating his voice, shouting questions. People tried to stop him from interrupting the press conference. He refused and continued to lunge towards the podium, and that is when he was removed from the room. So the way that he acted was completely inappropriate. It wasn't becoming a U.S. senator or a public official, and perhaps he wanted the scene, and that's what he wanted. But I think the American people are sick of this kind of action. I think the American people are tired of this. They just want the truth, and they just want to know what's happening, and that's what we were trying to provide.
We just had a Democrat and a Republican panelists, and both sides agreed that they felt this was unbecoming behavior of a United States senator. But apparently Chuck Schumer doesn't feel that way. Senator Schumer, here's what he just had to say. Watch.
Mr. President, I just saw something that sickened my stomach. The manhandling of a United States senator. We need immediate answers to what the hell went on.
How can these federal agents get away with this? Is the President of the United States telling folks to go down and start arresting United States senators?
What would you say to them, Secretary?
Well, he was never arrested. He was never arrested, and nobody knew who he was when he came into the room creating a scene. He was removed from the room, and yes, they started to put handcuffs on him when he finally identified himself, and then that was stopped. They said he wants to talk to you. I said, sure, I'd love to sit down and visit. So we went to a room and visited for 10 or 15 minutes and then exchanged phone numbers. So I just, I'm so sick of the politics, Martha. This is literally people's lives. We have criminal gangs and terrorists out on our streets that we're trying to remove from Los Angeles. I mean, people just need to get over themselves and have the backs of law enforcement and this president who just want to clean up America and make it safe again.
Anyone with a hint of common sense can see that this disruption was staged, to put Donald Trump and his representatives in bad light. Even if Senator Padilla identified himself, even if he did it properly, that gave him no right, or that rather gives him no right, to disrupt a press briefing as expected. obviously expected. Chuck Schumer had to make this all about President Trump, and Americans can see through all of that drama. Now the spotlight is back on common sense, and woke behavior now stinks.
Yeah, we watched your whole news conference, and then Todd Lyons speaking as well, the director of ICE, who we've spoken with many times, talking about the importance of removing these criminals from the streets. I thought it was very interesting, this exchange with Peter Doocy and President Trump about, who is being detained, who's being arrested, and maybe some changes perhaps to some of the, how some of these situations will be handled. Listen to what President Trump just said about the people who work in the farmlands in California. Watch.
Our farmers are being hurt badly by, they have very good workers. They've worked for them for 20 years. They're not citizens, but they've turned out to be, great. And we're going to have to do something about that.
So what are your thoughts on that? Because we've been, hearing that anyone who's here illegally will be removed because they've broken the law by crossing over. And obviously the president is citing at least one situation where he wants to see a different approach.
Well, the president wants to enforce the law, and people who've come into this country illegally have broken the law. There are Department of Labor programs and regulations that we can utilize, and he recognizes that there's a very big difference between those who perpetuate criminal activity and are in trafficking and drug trafficking, and those who have been here who want to be a part of the American dream. I still continue to encourage people to self-deport. Go out there and self-deport. When you get home, you will have the opportunity to receive $1,000 from the United States of America. We will pay your way, and you'll get the chance to come back here legally through these programs that we can utilize. And that's what the president wants to see. He recognizes that they're good people, but there needs to be application of the law in this country. That's what he ran on and what he'll deliver.
Are you seeing an increase in that? Because I heard you make that point today as well, Secretary Noem, and I thought, is that part of these operations? Obviously, you want to get these criminals out of the country who you have detainers for, but do you also want to encourage people to be a little bit jarred by this and say, you know what, I'm going to do the app and I'm going to take the $1,000 and I'm going to get out of here?
Well, I want to remind you, Martha, that who's elevating these tensions are these professional violent protesters. People have the right to peacefully protest, but then you have professionals that have been funded by NGOs, some of them by former government grants under Joe Biden. They've used those dollars to train people to come in and commit acts of violence during these peaceful protests. So there's a big difference between peaceful protests and what these professionals are doing. That's what's escalated the tensions. All we've been doing is enforcing the law, and I would tell everybody, if you wait till we arrest you and remove you from the country, you will never get the chance to come back to America. Right. The president's been very clear on that. So self-deport, and then we will help facilitate you coming back here legally and getting the chance to live the American dream.
Are you seeing an acceleration of people taking that option in the course of last week?
We are. I would encourage everybody, download the CBP Home app. Download that app. We will buy your plane ticket. We'll help you get home. When you get there, you'll get $1,000, and we'll facilitate you getting a process to where you can be here and be a part of our future.
Now, here's the catch, and this is exactly what the left has failed to understand. President Trump does not in any way downplay the fact that a lot of illegal immigrants play vital roles, actually, in the agricultural sector and other jobs. However, enabling these hard, working illegal immigrants, does not and will not favor Americans in the long run. And there stats to prove that. Now, about the anti-ICE protests, it's obvious that these protests are sponsored and are heightened by the fact that, Democrat senators and governors have thrown their weight behind them. But what's most troubling is the cover-up by Dems, who claim that these protests are peaceful and harmless. Now, good thing, President Trump isn't going to back down on his stance against illegal immigrants. So let me know your thoughts on this clip in the comment section. And please do well to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Until our next clip, please keep staying sensible. Peace out, fam.